Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday morning to you all. Hope you guys are waking up and feeling awesome out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day. And I hope everyone's been having a great beginning to their weekend out there so far. We do got a lot to discuss in this morning's video, and the first thing we'll talk about is today's severe weather threat across areas of the country. In fact, a pretty large area of the country at least has a risk of strong to severe thunderstorms. So we'll speak on the latest per the Storm Prediction Center. Just note that this info could change. We could go up another category. I could see it happening for later updates from the Storm Prediction Center. So we'll do that first. Then we'll break it down state by state. That's been something I've been trying to do a little bit more with severe weather. And I think I'm going to kind of link that into hurricane season and eventually into next winter also. It takes a little bit longer to prepare the videos, but I think we're able to kind of make our way through the videos a little bit quicker because I'm not trying to guess where towns are, cities are, and I can just focus on each individual state. So we'll do that for today's severe weather threat and probably for most severe weather threats going forward. So we'll do that, and then we'll talk about tomorrow's severe weather threat. We'll speak on one run of the HRRR model, the latest one that we have. We'll speak on that a little bit, but then we'll talk about the ingredients that are coming together for a little bit more of a higher impact severe weather threat for tomorrow, maybe a higher tornado threat with this. And remember, we've always kind of talked about Sunday being kind of the bigger day out of all of these days, and it certainly looks like it's going to be. Are we going to have a tornado outbreak? I don't think so, guys, but it's certainly going to be a day that poses a higher tornado risk. So speak on it, and then we'll break down today's weather. And in between all of that, we will discuss the flash flooding threat too and talk about some severe parameters. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put it in the comments below. I've had a couple people become members of the channel. I just want to say thank y'all and appreciate the people who continue to be members of the channel, especially during the slower times. It definitely means a whole lot, so I appreciate y'all. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So I do want to start this off by speaking on what the radar looks like, and it shows what's going on pretty well. You can see all the shower and storm activity rumbling through Texas, Oklahoma, through Missouri, up through the Midwest, and we even have some severe thunderstorms cruising through Ohio right now, and even some heavy downpours and storms into the southern tier of New York. Some of these areas just got snow a couple days ago, so pretty wild. But if you notice, all the energy, I'm going to draw on this really quick, is just kind of going like this. And it's not wanting to move sort of just west to east and, wet some of the southeast states. And we're starting to get kind of dry here in the southeast, especially the further east you get into Georgia and the Carolinas. And in fact, I think we're going to be pretty dry for the next several days. And it just seems to always do this really in any place in the country in the spring, but we tend to have really nasty dry stretches in certain areas of the country during the spring, and this is ours right now. I live here in central South Carolina, and we are definitely not getting rain very consistently right now. But the reason all the rain is doing this is because we have a high pressure that is basically just all the flow around this high pressure goes like this and like that, so that is pumping a lot of warm, moist air into the southeast, and that's why it warmed up dramatically yesterday across the southeast, and it's going to be even warmer today into our Easter for tomorrow. But the flow around this high pressure is making everything kind of pivot around the southeast, so it's basically like a ridge rider setup, which we see a lot more into summer. But that is why all the moisture is kind of doing what it's doing right now. So just want to kind of discuss that, and you can actually see it very well on radar right now. So the latest per the Storm Prediction Center, just note that there'll be another an update here in the next hour or so. So this information could change. As of right now, we have a slight risk, level 2 out of 5 in that yellow area. That does include central Texas into the whole entire southeastern portion of Oklahoma, and into the northwestern half of Arkansas, and to southern areas of Missouri. And I'll kind of zoom into some of these areas just so you guys can get a better look. Excuse me, San Angelo, Abilene, Waco, Kerrville, and does it include? Yeah, it includes like Waco. I've already said that. Not quite down to Austin, Texas, but marginal risk extends all the way up into areas of the Ohio Valley, areas of southern Illinois, Indiana, all the way into areas of PA and New York State. So we have a level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather in these regions, but if I kind of go back into this area, if we're going to get any upgrade to an enhanced risk, which would show up in orange, it would be somewhere down here, and I think it will be for hail. As of right now, we have a 5% risk of a tornado in the brown area. So this includes San Angelo, Abilene, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, all the way down to the Mexico-Texas border here, all the way up into southeastern portions of Oklahoma and a very small section of western Arkansas. Brown, 5% risk of a tornado. The green area is a 2% risk, 5-2. Now for winds, the entire slight risk area has a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour for today with these storms. And some of these storms are packing a punch right now. And then the hail threat. If you live in the yellow area, that is a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. But if you live in the black outline area right down here, see the black outline area with the black dashes going in between? That is where we have a 10% risk of significant hail, which is 2 inch in diameter or larger. So I could see us going up another category. For example, if they bump up this yellow area to a red area, that means it goes from a 15 to a 30% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch or larger. And I could see that happening down here for today. So big time hailstorms are possible here in Texas, especially for today. You know, San Angelo over to the Dallas-Fort Worth area up to Wichita Falls, Abilene, almost all the way down to Waco. So be aware of this all the way down the Interstate 10 corridor. If you're a trucker cruising down, you know, I-10 down here, be aware in Texas today for sure. So this is the latest outlook. Now I do want to show you the excessive rain outlook. There is a legit risk of flash flooding. If you live in this red area, that is a 40% chance of flash flood guidance being exceeded within 25 miles of any given location. So this includes Wichita Falls, up to McAllister, Ardmore, Fort Smith, Fayetteville, Tulsa, Springfield, Lebanon. This entire red area, 40% risk of flash flooding occurring. If you live in the yellow area, which includes Oklahoma City, St. Louis, down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, down to Abilene, over to Effingham, Illinois, 15% risk of flash flooding. So I want to get that out there too. And I'll section out each state as far as how much rain you could see over the next 48 hours or so moving forward. Now let's start off in Texas. We'll have to break down Texas in two different sections here. So let's speak on kind of west central and western Texas, where I do think we have a risk of some powerful storms for later on today. So if you're wondering what time frame we're at, it's 9 a.m. Central Time. So we're moving forward here. We're getting to 10, 11, 12. It's lunchtime. We're getting into this afternoon. And then as early as 1, 2, 3 o'clock, we start to get some strong storms that begin to fire here between Midland, Big Springs, San Angelo, Abilene. And listen, these storms will have a lot of energy to work with. And they could produce tornadoes, very large hail, and of course the damaging winds. But we could get some pretty wild storms out here. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of storm chasers targeting these areas down here in Texas. And chances are of course, there's not as highly populated areas out here, but please be aware if you live out here in West Texas, West Central Texas, these storms could produce some very, very large hail and then a tornado also. But you continue to get this going forward here. I can't speak this morning. And you start to get to 4 or 5 o'clock. I mean, look at those storms. And they could very well be on top of Big Spring, San Angelo. But they're kind of cruising on this particular run through all of these communities. And listen, just like I said, I know I've done repeating myself 100 times. These storms will have the atmospheric ingredients to work with to produce some very large hail, tornadoes. And not widespread tornadoes, just that 5% risk. You're lacking the needed kinematics for this to be a higher end tornado threat, but we could certainly get some tornadoes out of this, kind of like what we saw in Iowa a couple of days ago. But even as we're getting into 8 p.m., look at those storms continuing. If you're wondering what these little squiggly circle lines are, this is where we have stronger, more intense updrafts, rotating updrafts indicated by this specific model, the HRRR model. And, look at these cells. I mean, even as we're getting to 10 p.m., we get more supercells that fire up. And it's really showing all the updrafts on these storms being quite strong to intense. We get into midnight. I mean, look at them. Basically, these storms fire up, guys. I mean, they fire up around 2 p.m. this afternoon. They continue for the next 10 to 12 hours across this area. So this is definitely not a one and done type deal. Storms fire around 2 p.m. and then they just continue to kind of form in the same areas. So, man, be aware of that. We start to skew it a little bit further east. So this includes more of Abilene, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Wichita Falls, etc. We're getting some storms right now. I do think that this will lessen up as we get closer to midday, early afternoon. And then we start to focus in on the storms out to the west. There's those storms near Abilene, even some storms near San Angelo. Wichita Falls, I'd watch out about kind of middle, late afternoon. You could certainly start to get some very intense thunderstorms capable of producing all hazards. And then we start to get to 7 p.m. Look how the storms are kind of cruising over the same areas. Like Wichita Falls, it storms for hours on end. But it might not be the way that exactly unfolds, but of course it could be. But we get to 8, 9 p.m. Storms are having a hard time getting into the Dallas-Fort Worth area because they just want to kind of cruise over the same areas. But when you stop at around 10, man, there could be some intense thunderstorms from Abilene up to Wichita Falls, over to Sherman. They're not quite making it into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but I do think they start to get closer later on in the night. But this is midnight. It's like Wichita Falls just gets hit over and over and over again. And then finally a line of storms, after midnight begins to sweep down the interstate and then hit the Dallas-Fort Worth area by tomorrow morning. But will they kind of be weakened by then? Not quite sure. But it's pretty obvious that the corridor of worst storms in this area is probably going to be over here. It really likes these storms being quite intense in this circled area, sort of right into here and a little bit further west. So that might not be exactly where the storms will be, but that's certainly an area that seems to be more favored. Now we go up to Oklahoma. We start off around mid-morning, so around 10 a.m. time frame is up here. We start to get into about lunchtime, just some scattered showers and heavy rain into central and eastern Oklahoma. And these could begin to mature, get a little bit stronger. And, we get to 4, 5, 6. If we can get to 6, here we go, 6 p.m. This is 7 p.m. And you start to see some of these storms in the southern counties of Oklahoma begin to brighten up, get a little bit more red and orange down here, yellow. And this indicates that these storms are starting to get stronger. More so just heavy rain up here near Oklahoma and Tulsa, Oklahoma City and Tulsa. But as we start to get into 8 p.m., storms could really begin to intensify in those southern counties. As you can tell, you see those kind of circular lines coming off some of these storms. This indicates some stronger updrafts and definitely some storms capable of producing some very large hail. Some tornadoes are possible in this area. That's why you have the 5% risk. And you keep this going, and the weather could be quite intense, kind of southeast of Oklahoma City, south of Tulsa. Now, like near McAllister, all the areas right in here in Oklahoma, this is where the worst the weather is going to be. You see these storms around 9 p.m. Storms are packing a punch, capable of producing all hazards in this area. And you start to get into late in the evening. Like this is midnight. This is 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Flooding will begin to become a bigger deal the later we get into the next 24 hours. Like as we're getting into tonight, I mean, the rainfall is going to really be intense. So it's kind of like, let's back it up a little bit. It's kind of quiet through about mid-late afternoon, just some casual thunderstorms, heavy rain. Then as we start to get to the evening, guys, it starts to create a big ruckus down here in southern, especially the southeastern areas of Oklahoma, as we're going to begin to get round after round of intense thunderstorm activity down here that could produce all hazards. But just remember, it could also produce some very heavy rain also. So let's speak on how much rain could fall in this area over the next, this is between now and about 1 a.m. Monday morning. So Oklahoma City itself, about 2.5 inches of rain. Tulsa, 3. McAllister, 3 to 4 inches of rain. Down to Wichita Falls, 3. Graham, 3.5 inches of rain could fall. So a lot of rain going through central and eastern areas of Oklahoma. So please be aware of the flash flooding threat too. And to look at some of the parameters for Oklahoma and Texas, you can tell where the highest hail threat and the highest tornado threat is going to be by looking at the updraft velocity swath. This indicates where there's more intense and stronger updrafts in the atmosphere with some of these storms, and it's right Oh no, my clicker's not really wanting to work. That's right into this area. So please be aware, if you're in this area, this is where the most intense thunderstorm activity will most likely be throughout the next 24 hours, where we could have our highest tornado threat for sure. So now going forward and looking at Arkansas here, we're getting a lot of weather in the northwestern portion of the state currently, and that'll probably be where it stays for at least most of the morning. Some of it can inch a little bit further southeast down to Russellville. I don't think it'll get much in the way down to Little Rock or anything like that, but we get into about the early afternoon period. We probably get a break. Not a whole lot going on. This is 5 p.m., 6 p.m. I still think it rains a good chunk of the day, at least on and off up here in the northwestern half of the state, Fort Smith, especially up towards Fayetteville. And then we get into this evening, could begin to get some downpour activity as far southeast as maybe Little Rock. And then we start to get to 10 p.m., 11 p.m. The thunderstorms become more widespread once again in the northwestern half of the state. And we've already had a lot of rain up here in the northwestern portion of the state already. I think we'll get even more as we start to get later into this evening. Maybe a little bit of a lull break throughout most of the daytime period after this morning's rain, but things will begin to get intense again. Then these storms will get more intense. So not only does the heavy rain begin to fall up here, some of these storms could produce all hazards. Tornado risk will be there, not quite as high as for areas to the southwest, but large hail, damaging winds are still possible. And we continue to keep this going after midnight. This is 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., and then we get into tomorrow, which sets the stage for another severe weather threat that we'll speak on here in a second. But as far as rainfall for Arkansas, we'll mention that. Let's go down here. Rainfall between now and 1 a.m. Monday. Most of it is confined to the northwestern half of the state. Now, this does include tomorrow's potential rainfall also for these areas, but as you can tell, most of the rainfall will fall over the next 24, 30 hours or so, and up there in the northwestern half of the state could get a few inches of rain. Little Rock, maybe a half an inch near Russellville, kind of that middle ground area, but watch out for flash flooding. You do have a moderate risk of flash flooding occurring, 40% risk up in the northwestern half of the state. So moving forward here and looking at Missouri, this morning you're getting a lot of rain activity. The HRRR model, by the way, picked up on that line of storms that's currently sweeping through the southeastern area of the state right now pretty well. I don't know if you remember us mentioning that yesterday morning. It was picking up on an intense line of storms, and we kind of go back and look at the radar here. It's now starting to move into southern Illinois, but it was in southeastern areas of Missouri. But it's no longer severe, but you can tell there's a line of storms moving through. HRRR model picked up on that pretty darn well. But we continue to move forward here. We're starting to get into around lunchtime today. Just a lot of heavy rain, maybe some strong to severe storms closer to the boot heel of Missouri. But we get into this afternoon, just rounds of heavy rain. Could make it all the way up into Columbia eventually, and then we start to get into about 10 p.m. Still not a whole lot going on. Some of the storms in the southern areas of the state could start to become more intense. And then I do think the severe weather threat actually ramps up after the sun sets tonight in southern Missouri. As you can tell, the color's starting to brighten up down here, indicating some stronger cells. But we start to get to 1, 2, 3. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning. Some of these storms are pretty intense. And once again, like another structure of storms starts to cruise through southeastern Missouri. It's like deja vu from this morning. Could very well happen again tomorrow morning after midnight. So we'll definitely get more so a lot of heavy rain up into Missouri. But the southern counties south of Springfield, well, including Springfield, south of Rolla, these storms could be quite intense. And once again, we'll look at how much rainfall could fall in these areas. And yeah, a lot of rain. Definitely a legit flash flooding threat. Columbia, 3 inches of rain. St. Louis, 2 to 3 inches of rain. Rolla, Springfield, Clinton, Joplin. All you guys could get over 3 inches of rain today. And then the updraft Felicity swath. This is kind of picking up what's going on right now too. But you can tell where our highest threat for a quick spin up, a tornado, will be cutting right through the northwestern half of Arkansas through southern and southeastern Missouri. This is probably where our most intense thunderstorm activity will be. All that stuff you see in southern Illinois is really what's going on this morning. And just to cover everybody else, I'm not going to section out Illinois, Indiana, Ohio for a marginal risk. I typically will only do that for a slight risk or higher. But you got that line of storms making its way through Illinois right now. We're going to continue to get that line of storms that makes its way through the rest of Indiana also. And then by mid-morning, those storms still could be intense. It's about mid to late morning, getting closer to lunchtime, actually. You see, here in central Ohio, we could have a line of storms making its way through. That's the same line of storms that's moving into southern areas of Illinois right now. And then we'll get more storms that are possible in southern Illinois. Could be strong to severe. Could even get some storms in far western Kentucky later on, just after lunchtime, around early to mid-afternoon. And it looks like a lot of it breaks up by late afternoon, the evening time. Not a whole lot going on. Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky. And then as we start to get into the overnight hours, some more shower and storm activity will greet you guys, mainly in the state of Illinois as we're waking up tomorrow morning. So there is a risk of severe weather tomorrow. In fact, it's a higher risk. We have an enhanced risk that includes northern Arkansas into southern Missouri, into central Missouri, all the way up into a small section of western Illinois. Level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk. Level 2 out of 5 slight risk in the yellow includes St. Louis over to Kansas City, Joplin, down to Pine Bluff, all the way down to Shreveport, Louisiana. Marginal risk goes all the way from Houston all the way up to just south of Davenport. But that enhanced risk area includes Columbia, the Ozarks, Little Rock, Fayetteville, Lebanon, Springfield. So what's driving this? It's bad. Let's make it a little bit larger here. The tornado threat. There's a 10% risk of a tornado within 25 miles of any given location in that yellow area. Columbia down to Springfield, down to the Ozarks. So that yellow, 10% risk of a tornado. The brown area is a 5% risk of a tornado, all the way down to Little Rock. And then the wind threat, which is, I think, what's driving, for the most part, this enhanced risk area. Technically, tornado risk is too, but this includes all of the enhanced risk area. 30% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour in this red area. And then the threat of hail in the entire yellow area, that is a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. So moving forward here, just to kind of take a quick peek on what the radar could look like tomorrow. I think tomorrow is just a different setup. We have a short wave that ejects across the country. I think we'll have a line of storms developing in far eastern Oklahoma. You see this? And this is around 18Z tomorrow, so about early afternoon. And then these storms will intensify as they begin to move into a favorable environment for the intensification of these storms. And as you can tell, the storms are blasting through Springfield, making their way through Arkansas, through Missouri. And these storms, it looks like one sweep through. They kind of move through these areas, and they could produce all hazards. I mean, I would say especially up into Missouri, I think the tornado threat will be the highest into Missouri. But these storms will be intense. It's getting into tomorrow evening. Then the storms will move eventually into Illinois. I think we can get some storms as far north as maybe Chicago. And then we start to get into the overnight hours tomorrow night. And then the storms kind of lose some forcing as the main piece of energy begins to shoot off to the north. But we're definitely going to get one, I would say, more so sweep through of storms tomorrow across Missouri and Arkansas and surrounding states. But I do think that these storms will be more intense than they will be today. Now, what's driving this shortwave ejecting across the country is going to really ramp up the low-level flow. So if you look at these wind barbs, see the wind barb right here in the flag portion is pointing to the south. That means winds are shooting from the south to the north, pulling up a lot of moisture and just providing a lot of directional turning with height. We call it directional shear. Let's put the spin in the atmosphere, increases the tornado threat. So this will bring a low-level jet. Low levels meaning about a mile above our heads, 4,000 to 6,000 feet up in the air, pushing 50 to 60 knots. This will be riding right over sections of Missouri and Arkansas. So that will really provide ingredients for a higher end tornado and damaging wind threat throughout this area. So this will be driving that line of storms, if you will. And because we have such an intense flow out the south, this yanks up for at least a day a lot of low-level moisture. So these are dew points by about midday, early afternoon tomorrow. They rise and soar back into the mid to upper 60s all the way north of St. Louis. So we have this huge moist sector, dew points in the 60s. That's a lot of moisture to get the job done for this severe storm potential. So you can check that off the box as kinematic energy, and because of this, we'll have some storm fuel up into this area. So just be aware of that. Definitely a more legit severe weather threat for tomorrow. The rest of the country, we've already showed you the radar. We got flood watches up in the green. We still got winter weather alerts across Colorado and New Mexico. Some red flag warnings continue across New Mexico and southwest Texas. Elsewhere, it's pretty quiet. And then there's another look at the Storm Prediction Center outlook. Just kind of a broad look. Just note that the marginal risk does extend all the way up to the southern portions of the Adirondacks today. So there is a risk of severe weather all the way up there. Another look at the flash flooding threat here. And then the southeast today, it's a beautiful day. It's a hot day, but it's a dry day. Not really hot, it's warm. But no rain expected for all of the southeast. Most of the energy is going to be pivoting around us here, and as we're getting into tomorrow morning, it will remain the same deal. Just it's going to be a nice warm day across the southeast, so enjoy it. Now the northeast, we're going to get a risk of some strong to severe storms. I think there's an area of storms moving through the western area of New York State right now. This will continue to cruise across the entire state. By the time we get to about midday, these round of heavy rain, maybe even some rumbles of thunder, will make its way through Vermont, through New Hampshire. I think it'll weaken, and then we'll get some storms that'll fire in central New York. You see these splotches of red and orange and yellow. Some thunderstorm activity in central New York that'll get going. Even in western central PA, you see some thunderstorms. So don't let the fact that, all the attention is a little bit more to your west distract you from the fact that you guys are going to get thunderstorms also. So widespread thunderstorm activity possible across the Northeast today. So if you're a summer weather fan, a thunderstorm fan up here in the Northeast, today might be your day depending on where you live. So just be aware of that. And by the time we get to tomorrow morning, we have calmer conditions. And I'm going to skip the South Central U.S. because we pretty much already covered it. But the North Central U.S., pretty nice day. All your energies to the south, you're more entrenched in cold air. So some rain and snow showers are possible for the UP of Michigan today. But then we wake up tomorrow morning, then we're going to get another surge of moisture from your south moving to the north. And then the western U.S., we're going to have some snow just drifting around across areas of New Mexico, southern Colorado, lower elevations. This will just be in the form of rain and all that good stuff. So temperatures, warm across the southeast. You can see quite literally where the ridge is. It's going to be it might hit 90 degrees somewhere in like Virginia today. It's going to be warm for the big cities of New York and Boston, Long Island, New Jersey, the Delmarva, Delaware. It'll be very nice. 70s surging well widespread across the Northeast. Cooler air across the middle of the country, but not too bad. This is the rest of the western U.S. That's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and have a wonderful Saturday.